Welcome to NFP Ocean's Meet the Member Education Series. In this video, our founder Kerrie Sheaves interviews Les Stock from Worldwide Parramatta. They'll be discussing how NFPs can use printing and signage to effectively grow their brand and value to stakeholders effectively and efficiently.
Hi Les, how are you today?
Good, thanks, Kerrie. Yourself?
Fabulous. Well, let's get straight into today's topic. Today, we are talking about how not-for-profits are able to use print, signage, and all their promotional products, all of the printing that they do, and how they use suppliers effectively to be able to grow their organisations. One of the challenges that I see often with the NFP sector is they have a bit of a love-hate relationship when it comes to their print and promotional materials. And I think that generally comes from a real challenge around wastage. So they're wanting to use their budgets effectively. They're also worried that a lot of what they produce to get the right cost structure, they're having to produce a lot of them, and then they waste them. They sit in drawers, or they end up throwing out old banners for events. And they're an organisation that in an industry that doesn't like to waste things, hesitant to be throwing stuff out which hasn't been used. But it's a massive enabler for their organisations to deliver not just their services, but often deliver value to sponsors and funders and get brand visibility. So let's talk a little bit about that. How do you think not-for-profit organisations can approach the way that they use printing, signage, and their marketing to get a better result that is sustainable for them?
Okay. I'm actually going to flip that a little, Kerrie, in terms of, you mentioned about the wastage. One of the things that we know with printing is that, just take business cards as an example only. The typical minimum order is $250, and that might have a value of, just call that $150. And I say to clients, why don't you order 500? And they go, oh, no, that doubles the price. It doesn't. It only goes up a small percentage, 10, 20%, 30%, depending on what the final spec is. And the concept behind that is that your unit cost comes down. So instead of having 250 business cards and paying $150 for it each time, you've got 500 business cards. You might have paid $175 or $180, or maybe even $200, depending on what the actual product was, the end product was. And therefore, you actually are saving money by ordering a little bit more at each time, and only ordering it on a less frequent basis. Now, to your point a moment ago, it needs to be a product that's not likely to change. If you've got products that change, it becomes harder. If you're looking at very small numbers, then that can be done. We'll go down to as low as printing something like 50. Below that, it becomes uneconomical. I will, for some clients, particularly in the not-for-profit sector, I'll go down lower than that. But I do explain to people, be careful, because when printers set up a print machine, there's a minimum cost just to turn the thing on. And then what we're effectively doing is putting through pieces of paper. So we know what that looks like. So when a client says, I only want 30 A5 flyers, we'll say, look, get 50. It's probably only going to cost you a couple of bucks more. And that way you've got enough to cover you. If you run out, to the point you made a moment ago, you can always order another 50. We also look at the back end of our ordering history. We have all of our clients, we have the order history, and we can go through and we can look at it and basically audit what's going on and say, you've ordered that A5 flyer 6 times this year and you've ordered it at 50 or 100 at a time. Maybe order it twice because you haven't changed it. The price again comes down because we're running a slightly bigger run on the machines. And we do give that advice to clients all the time around what we think is the better way to manage your spend. There's other ways that you can manage that spend in terms of not going beyond a budget. Sometimes people look at different kinds of product, and we look at the kind and we go, you've got 4 different kinds, but actually 2 of those are very similar. And again, every time you change the artwork, it's a different setup in the machine. And that's the experience that we can offer to guide people to say, do you really need 4? Because I'm going to have to charge you for 4 different sets of different kinds of product, whereas maybe 2 or 3 might actually do the job.
Yeah, and I think maybe working a little bit more proactively with suppliers like yourself can actually help. And I think, what tends to happen is that the not-for-profit organisations, they work in isolation. They go creating something, they get in their mind what they think they need and their quantities. And then they're treating service providers like yourself as a transaction rather than partnering with them to come up with solutions. I suppose, what are the pros and cons of doing that?
Well, I suppose if you're looking at a printer as a transactional relationship, you'll have multiple printers on your books. The first thing that happens there is you start to give yourself problems with your brand. Because no two printers are the same. And if a printer's only getting some of the work, he's pricing it accordingly. Yep. If a printer's getting all or most of the work, he's pricing that accordingly as well. And that's in the favor of the organization, because they're going, look, loyal customer, we go out of our way to make sure that they get exactly what they want, that it's on brand, it's the right quantity, it's the right material, and obviously therefore it's the right price, because it gives us confidence to know that that particular client is supporting us. And I've done this for the last 10 years of my business, I'll support them back. I have a bit of I've mentioned this to you before privately, a bit of a thing for not-for-profits. I have quite a few not-for-profits on my books. It's my way of paying it forward, I guess. Having been around for a little while, I like to give a little. And so therefore I look at the not-for-profits that we do business with and say, well, if I can help you, if I can save you money, if I can show you how to do things a little bit differently, and maybe collate all of your orders into one place rather than spreading them, and that becomes a better experience for you and a more cost-effective experience for you, then that's what we're here to do. It is that partnering approach. I don't like the transactional side of things, to be honest with you. It's a necessary part of business, but personally, I'd rather do partnering with people and know that I've got their back, and in return, I guess they've got mine.
Yeah, and look, I think, as a not-for-profit, your core business isn't to print things or to produce things. It's you need those things to help you deliver various programs, or maybe you've got an event that you need to produce signage or other materials for, but that's not actually your core business, that component of it. And so you're not going to have all the answers or all the great solutions that could really maximize the budget that you're working with. So working and engaging with your supplier as that partner to really at the very early stages say, here's what we're thinking of doing. We have the need to produce X, but are there other alternatives? I know, personally, I've worked with people who are in print signage before, where we've said, look, this is my idea of kind of how we want this to work. And they came back to us with several different ideas, which were actually better than I came up with and were a lot more cost effective, and we could achieve results I didn't think we could achieve. So I think it's definitely worthwhile reaching out early and having conversations, not just sending a piece of artwork and say, print this or create this. Sure, obviously there's times for that. But I know that, you guys have produced for an organisation that I was working with a couple of years ago, a book that they needed to have done as they wanted to give away to people who are participating in their program. And the ability to just talk through, how do we want this to work? What are the different options? There's probably 100 different options for, notebooks. So to be able to get it for the right quality, the right point, the right color, all of those things, a huge amount of work that we don't want to be wasting inside the NFP when we could actually be just going straight to people who know what they're doing.
One of the things you've mentioned there, Kerrie, if I was trying to interrupt you, is you've actually hit on a key point around it's the hidden cost of design. So we get artwork or artwork requests sent to us, and there's a lot of issues with it. It might not have trim and bleed. There might be poor rasterization, which is the flattening of images. And when you talk to the organisation, they've got an outsourced graphic designer. They'll take a brief. They'll action the brief then. But unfortunately for us, in our world, a lot of graphic designers don't understand the print needs. And so we get the file, and then our graphic designer, our own in-house graphic designer, looks at it and goes, I've got a list of 6 things I need to have fixed before I can actually even contemplate creating a proof file. So the hidden cost is that cost of a graphic designer that the NFP has gone to use that may or may not understand how printing actually works. And sadly, too many don't. Now you talk about the cost of the print, but it's the cost of the design piece. We've got an NFP client that we've had for some time where they have us on retainer for a graphic design. So we do all of their graphic design. We understand their organisation. We understand their branding. We actually built that for them under their brief. So for them to come to us and say, I want to build an A5 flyer, my graphic designer knows exactly what needs required. She takes the brief, gets the content, gets the imagery, puts it together, does it a much quicker time frame than perhaps another graphic designer might, and that all saves time and money. One of the things that we deal with a lot of customers is not enough time. Call us on a Monday wanting it by Wednesday. It's not a good idea. Because it is common, unfortunately. You end up paying more for it because you go to, depending on what the job is and where it's being produced, you end up paying more for something like that. So that's, again, us managing that understanding of the client. Don't give us 2 days. We ideally want more than that, depending on what it is. Some things we can do quickly, but it's just managing the client's expectation around timing, particularly when it's leading up to an event, which in most cases it is.
Yeah, and you're right. That is the thing that gets left to last. We do all this work getting the information about the event ready, getting the tickets sold, and then someone sits down about a week from the event and says, "Oh, what are we going to put on the tables? Oh, should we put a flyer on there? Maybe we need a QR code for something." And it is this last minute. How are we actually going to engage people, and what are we going to need to print off? And inevitably what happens is they realize that the things they need created, they can't do in-house with the basic printer they've got. And all of a sudden now they're trying to, as you say, get something graphically designed, and they're jumping on Canva, or if they've got any of those skills to do their own, or some graphic designers putting something together who may or may not be, print ready in regard to its file size or its layout, and then they're giving you a call 2 days before the event saying, "Hey, can you get this for us tomorrow?"
Happens a lot.
Look, it's and unfortunately it's a problem. So one of the things that obviously is a tip, I think, for not-for-profit organizations is to sit down early and think about the outcomes you're looking for from the activity that you're doing, and what ingredients you're going to need to get those outcomes, which will probably include something that they're taking away, or something that they're engaging with that's physical or tangible. And especially if there's sponsors involved, sponsors are expecting their logos to be on everything, whether it's a menu, whether it's a signage on a table, whether it's a pop-up banner or whatever it might be. And all of those things do take time to create. I mean, sure, they can be turned around in a couple of days, but you're going to pay a premium for that, because it can't be delivered in en masse, or leverage other types of options like overseas print, etc. So I think that's something that's a really important tip for not-for-profits, that they really do need to be thinking ahead about how they want to engage with print materials. We were talking about OPM. So what is OPM, and how does it work for not-for-profits?
Okay, this is where we can consolidate a lot of activity for a not-for-profit. So OPM is online product management. So it's basically an online portal where we load the client's assets, so business cards, flyers, pop-up banners, promotional material, annual reports, etc. You can add in marketing material, you can add in assets in there like your own branding, files for your different imagery, etc. And it gives you a one-stop shop to either create your own flyer quickly, which takes away all of those issues we just mentioned before. You can select the quantity suitable for the job or the event that's in front of you, because pricing is already preloaded for you, already been negotiated and agreeing, so you know you're getting a good price, a right price. It'll give you delivery lead times. You can actually put in there, this particular business card takes 3 days. This particular coffee mug takes 7 days or 10 days. So you've got those sort of things in there as well. And it allows you to visibly see what you're doing and when you're doing it. So the online product management portal gives the client the ability to consolidate everything into one place. Now, it's actually not just a print portal. You can put any supplier you like on there. So it could be your furniture supplier, as an example. It could be your office supplies in terms of printers, as in the physical printers you buy yourselves rather than using us. There's all sorts of suppliers you can put on there. And then the orders are placed through that system. They go directly to that supplier, and that supplier fulfills in their normal way. So online product management is a great centralized portal for companies, not-for-profits particularly, to be able to manage their everyday requirements. The back end of that, though, is the trick, is that we get to see it all. So then we can help manage the relationship. So we have clients, we know when their events are. So I email them several weeks beforehand. "Hi, Kerrie, you've got an event coming up. We had an event this time last year. Is that event happening again?" You go, "Oh, yes, it is." So I prompted you to get ready for that event, because it's in my interest to make sure that you don't miss your deadlines. And then we work collaboratively together because we can see the information sitting in our system that says we need to work with Kerrie to make sure that she doesn't miss those deadlines because they're crucial. Failure to have the right products in the right place at the right time is going to turn out to be an event you don't really want to be talking about too much. So online product management, great front-end ordering and preparing of documents. You mentioned a moment ago about Canva. You can load templates into the online product management portal. You simply fill in the content. You can change imagery, but we lock things like branding, so logos, addresses, so they can't be moved, and you can give that to multiple people. It's not just one person in marketing. You can have an approval process every step of the way to make sure that somebody in a outlying location doesn't do it wrong, that they maybe didn't do the spelling check, which is already in the system, to get that product right. So there's a whole bunch of safety nets, I suppose, within the portal that makes sure that it's completed correctly, it's completed on time, the correct quantity has been chosen, the correct delivery address has been chosen, and the correct approvals are there in terms of meeting the budgets. And you can set budgets too, by the way. So you can have an outlet. So if you've got a multiple site business, if you allocate a budget and then for some reason they're mismanaging their budget, you're going to see that straight away because they're going to get blocked from ordering it, which means they've got to ring somebody in that office and say, I need to order some flyers, but I've got no money left. They can make that decision appropriately.
Yeah, look, I think that's actually a really good tool for multi-site not-for-profit. So, and even organisations that might have very large and dispersed volunteer base. So what can happen is obviously you can have not-for-profits that do have multiple destinations and out in various different regions, and they're using a shared services model. So they are being controlled for expenditure like this by head office, and obviously brand and reputation, that there's key things they want to do. And I've certainly seen where there's been a real bottleneck happening where you've got, you know, out in the field volunteers who are trying to do on the fly activities and connect with people. They come up with a great idea for something, they need a flyer created or a sign created, and they need some local, you know, the local sponsors got involved for the local soccer club who's, you know, supporting them, and they are then trying to get that through head office, and there's, you know, emails back and forth, or someone's on holidays, and, you know, they're taking forever to review it. And, you know, there's slight differences with the brand colors because the person who's doing it at, you know, their end doesn't understand that they have to actually have the exact code for the color, not just one that kind of looks like it that was on, you know, probably not even Canva, probably something like PowerPoint. And so there's this wishy-washy brand going out into different areas. And of course, that's a concern for head office, so they tend to just cut it off and say, you know, you can't produce anything unless we do it, which isn't helpful because it takes forever then to get anything done. Whereas a process like this would enable and does enable organizations to have things turned around fast but still have consistency of brand, and particularly on that budget side, as you've mentioned, if you've got people who are wasting because they're not understanding how cost structures work for, you know, producing materials, because they don't have visibility of it as well as the part of the issue, then it's very easy to see it blow out in one region when it doesn't have to do that. So to implement something like an OPM system, is it an expensive thing? What type of organisation do you think it's most suitable for from size or turnover?
Look, there is a cost associated to build, but we look at each client on their own merits, and we make a commercial decision based on what we're looking to do for that particular client. So, who's it suitable for? There is an ongoing maintenance cost because we're obviously maintaining it in the back end through our IT structure, but they're usually generally fairly modest. And sometimes we look at the spend from the client and say, look, you're spending a little more than we thought you were going to, so we're going to waiver that cost. So there's many different structures about how to actually fund it and make it happen. From a who's it suitable for? Anybody who's got either multiple site outlets, a large organisation that requires strong branding controls, works across the country. We've got a couple of NFPs that are national NFPs. We've got a couple that are state-based only, but they have multiple sites. So managing the sites the way I've just described in terms of budgeting and brand protection is crucial for any organisation. probably doesn't suit somebody who's only ordering the occasional box of business cards or the occasional flyer. That's what we call an ad hoc sales process. Send us an email, give us a telephone call, we take your brief, we respond with a quote, and then obviously we get that a process happening. But online product management or integrated supply chain management system, as somebody said to me recently, that's more what he felt it was, but it is giving a supply chain management system to an organization the ability to manage assets and manage people's understanding of how you actually portray the organization. Typically, as I say, the kind of places that have multiple sites across a state, nationally, even across the city for that matter. You could have 10 offices across Sydney. That's fine. That works.
Yeah, and I think that's, at the different stages of growth for a not-for-profit, that at that very small stage, it tends to be, it tends to change quite a lot what they're actually producing, and every single event is different and everything they're doing, because they're kind of working it out as they go. And it comes a point where there are key programs which are being replicated, and they're going through just cohorts of people participating. And so the materials, the type of activities they're doing are not so much set in stone, but they are consistent. And so once they start doing that, it becomes easier to then determine what are we going to need on a regular basis, what kind of quantities can we forecast and predict. But also then if they're scaling, that they're going to multiple sites or they're going to multiple regions where they're going to be copying and pasting potentially the same or very similar program, but with maybe a localized context. It becomes far easier for them to then predict what are we going to need and how do we then manage that. But then of course that brand consistency and the ease of being able to order and purchase, manage budgets and have those approvals in place if it's head office, managed, makes all the sense in the world. So I think it's definitely something not-for-profits should be thinking about, considering about how they manage, not just obviously their printing, but broadly their assets. If they're going to funders and saying, look, we need to, copy this program and put this now in this new region, and we're going to need all of these different components that make up that program, using a tool, like an OPM actually makes a lot of sense to be able to manage that consistently and be able to report against it too, because acquittals is something which obviously is important when it comes to not-for-profits, that they actually need to be reporting on how they're using assets, and that includes the disposable assets that they use, and also how they're potentially repurposing what they have. That's an area where I think with that love-hate relationship side of things, going back to that's one of the challenges, that often they're producing things that they can't repurpose. But that's partly, I think, because they haven't actually spent some time talking about that as an outcome they're looking for. So even when they're talking with you and saying, we're doing this activity, but we want the ability to somehow repurpose that, so it's not just this one-off expense, we want to be able to get more mileage out of it. What could be ways that we do that? That's, I think, an important conversation to have, because if it is just we're producing things and then we're just tossing it out the next day because we can't use it for anything else. Sometimes that's the case if it's very specific, but there's sometimes other things that can be thought about. I know for us, for example, when we've produced materials that we need for our organization, we think about, well, what if I could use this in another space? If I have very specific content on it, I might only be able to use it for that activity or event. But if I didn't have that word and I only had this image on it, then I could use that for a completely different activity or event, and it would be great for both. But thinking about how to do that. The other thing I think is around how you actually move everything around. So one of the things which we had to think about was, we don't want to be lugging a huge amount of equipment around with us, but we need signage that has high impact. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. That's lightweight, that's easy to pack down and move. Just doing a pull-up banner or something may not be the answer. There might be some really big high impact stuff. So I wanted to have talk a little bit about conferences and activities. A lot of not-for-profits, they're often now going to conferences, or they're exhibiting, or they may be at their local business chamber and they're being allowed to expo what they're doing, and they want to get a higher impact, but they they want something that's pretty easy to put together. It can't be something that you have to be a professional conference, cabinetry maker to put together.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things you're seeing that organizations are now embracing that are new, high impact signage that maybe they're not aware of?
So here's a couple. The pull-up banner is always a good go-to to get to do. It's lightweight, easy. They're not expensive, generally speaking, so you're always going to have that. But one thing I've noticed recently out of events is actually table throws. You go to an event, people have got a tablecloth, but it doesn't have any branding on it.
Yeah.
You've got a tablecloth, put branding on it. I've got a client this morning. Branding everywhere. So table throw is very much one that you put on a table where you're putting your flyers and other information that you've got, whether you're transacting at all, whatever you've got on there. A table throw telling people who you are and what you do, or just simply your logo. It's a pretty easy thing to do. And again, table throw, very light and easy to put in the back of a car and throw over a table when you're ready. The one thing that does resonate strongly with people is a giveaway. So a promotional type product. So depending on who you are, what it is you're giving, it could be a little squeeze ball, it could be a money tin, it could be a coffee cup, it could be a drink bottle. It doesn't really matter what it is. Obviously, cost is important and etc. But and transportation. But in terms of getting it, because a lot of coffee cups can be very heavy. But having a product that is a giveaway with your brand on it. We know that, and I'll give the example of print. We know that when we give somebody a printed piece of paper and it goes on their desk, there's a 47% chance that that particular piece of material will be read more than once. The same applies for a promotional product. I've got a coffee cup on my desk that I've been using. I won't mention the company's name, but I do know the owner reasonably well. And if somebody said to me, I need a so-and-so a supplier, I would go straight to that particular owner and say, here's a lead for you. So having your name sitting on somebody's desk, somebody go, need to go back to that organisation, here's the reasons why. There are all sorts of different kinds of signage, Kerrie. Little A4 strut signs that sit on a table that tell a story, maybe have a QR code on them, as you mentioned before, which takes people to a website. They're quite common today. I've probably got 1,000 different options around what kind of products should you have at an event, and they can range from something as light and easy as a fabric sign that sits behind the table, obviously the tablecloth as I mentioned, and that good old safety pull-up banner was just an absolute go-to every single time. If you're outside, you've got teardrop banners, flags, those sorts of things. The big tents that they can obviously do if you've got an outside event, if you're going to a sporting sort of organisation. So there's no end of options that you can use to tell people who you are and what you do.
Yeah, and I think there's two parts to that. One, I think the more people are aware of your brand as a not-for-profit, the more trust they have in you, and it's more recognizable. So when you're trying to attract volunteers, supporters, sponsors, any of those things, and people using your service potentially as well, the brand recognition is a really important part of the trust factor. And so not underestimating that as a part of the program. And we talk about making sure you've built those program costs as a part of your grant application, as a part of delivering your service, not something else that's an overhead, but actually a really important part of visibility and engagement. And the other side of things, I think, is, as you mentioned, something that people are taking away that keeps them connected to you. So even as simple as if somebody is sponsoring you or donating to you, sending them a mug with your brand on it, so it's sitting literally on their desk every day, is reinforcing I'm connected to that organisation, I feel good about it, I want other people to know about it. Maybe they'll ask me about this brand that they've seen on my desk at work that I can talk about. That it might not be something that you think is a big deal, but something they can use, like mouse mats, that sit on their, on their desk every day. So, the pens are great, but the reality is everyone gives out pens. It's pretty cheap. And at some point, people are using them. I mean, I'm always using people's pens, but so I don't mind pens, but they are kept. So I always say to people, pick things that people will probably use every day and are likely to keep and not likely to throw away. And that's because there's an intrinsic value attached to them. And even things like, you know, if you're doing golf days, you can get golf balls done, you can get tees done, you can get things that they're going to, every time they come out on the golf course, they see your brand because they're holding it in their hands. So I think it's underestimated, and often it's discounted because people go, oh, that's expensive. But it's actually got a huge amount of lasting value beyond just printing a postcard and handing it to them with your information on it, which is good as well. But with all the challenge we now have with cutting through the noise on email through spam filters and everything people get into their junk folder every day, digital marketing, you know, it's insanely expensive to try and get through and to try and build audiences. This is where I think, you know, print and signage is starting to come back into its own again, because it's about the only thing that cuts through. Even just physically sending somebody a postcard or a letter has a better cut through than sending them an email now.
Definitely a resurgence. The other thing too, Kerrie, which I just remembered, branded merchandise. I was at a recent Chamber of Commerce event. There was a not-for-profit who were selling their product. So they were making a little bit of money. So they were generating some revenue for themselves. Obviously, they've gone and bought the branded merch from a supplier. Wasn't me, unfortunately, but that doesn't matter. And they're selling their product. I actually, from previous year, had one of their sloppy joes, which I wear every morning to the gym. So it works. So you can buy your branded merch, put your own story on there, your logo, whatever your little catch cries are, and then sell that product. So whenever I walk into the gym, people know I bought that from an organisation, a not-for-profit. That's another way of selling, whether it be sloppy joes, t-shirts. We've got 25,000 lines on our promo site, so you could pick any number of products you could then on-sell to people who will happily buy them because they know they're supporting you. And people are actually very generous like that. You think, oh, it's winter, I need a new sloppy joe, whatever price it is. Yes, I know I'm paying a few dollars more for the organisation to make a little bit of profit. Hey, that's good. That's my way of paying it forward. And I'd be one of thousands of people who would think that way, I would have thought. So that's another way of using branded merch to great effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've definitely done it with organisations that we've run in. We've had, you know, baseball caps and things. And you're right, people, especially when you have them at your events, and, you know, we did them at golf days, you know, people needed a cap for the day and they were more than happy, even if they had a cap, to pay $10 for a cap. Correct. And you know, it was helping get our brand out there, and then they'd take their photos with all their caps on, which was helping us to, you know, get the brand out there. So
absolutely,
it's a potential other income stream, and it doesn't have to be an onerous thing, but it's just about being, you know, a bit more creative with it. So I think, you know, I would ask, as we wrap up, what is your number one tip for not-for-profits who are thinking about how they use their marketing in the area of print and signage and tangible product better to get their mission out there?
Okay. A safe assumption that most, if not all, not-for-profits have a good marketing department. There's somebody within the organisation that has strong understanding of how to market a brand. The key thing to anything, particularly from a printing perspective, is that pre-planning. Giving us as much notice as possible. I've got a client that 3 weeks ago asked for quotes. She doesn't require the goods till July. I've said to her, place the order with us straight away, as soon as you can, as soon as you get approval, so that we can then work with you to make sure we meet deadlines. So our role as a partner, which we talked about earlier, is around ensuring that we manage against your deadlines. So we're going to ask you questions like, when do you need it by? And you're going to tell us. And we go, right, now we know what we've got to do. So that pre-planning piece is crucial. We'll give you tips. If you want to use a product like Canva, no problem. But we'll tell you to use trim and bleed when you save the file, because otherwise we're going to go backwards and forwards. One of the biggest wastages between a not-for-profit client, all clients for that matter, and us, is sending us the wrong file information. We know what we want, so we're going to tell you, because we know what we need, I should say. So we'll tell you what we need, and that saves you time. So if you've got somebody working on Canva as the example for preparing a print file, and they send it without trim and bleed, we can't adjust that. We don't have nobody does. So we need the original file. And so we'll go back and give that kind of guidance. That kind of open communication, that honesty, that trust between us and the client, that goes a long way to ensuring those deadlines are met. We'll manage your expectations around when you need things by. We say we need longer because here's the reasons why, particularly if it's a larger run of printing. But that's just that partnering approach that we have with our clients, and it works.
I think with most things, if we do adequate planning and we engage early, we get the right advice, we save a lot of time and money, and we get the outcome we're looking for. Plus, we may get a whole heap of other ideas and options that we wouldn't have if we've left things to the last minute. Look, Les, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I am encouraging NFPs who are thinking about their marketing, their branding, and how they use their printing, signage, and physical marketing production effectively to grow their organizations, to reach out to Les from Worldwide and just have a chat about what your organization's trying to do and its strategy for this year and how you might be a little bit more effective. Thanks, Les.
Thanks, Kerrie. Appreciate it.
You can reach out to Worldwide Parramatta to help your NFP grow through NFP Ocean. Join us today and start exploring the great resources and services we offer.